of the new
Day.
So this time we took a long time to get back to the new path, almost a month gap, but I'm sure now we will go at the normal pace. So today we will be doing this. It's a beautiful chapter, but it is a long chapter. So we will break it and try to understand. And then, if time permits, we will read again. Otherwise, we will cover the rest of it in the next class. So before we start, as always, let's sit up straight, tense the whole body, relax. Two more times. Inhale, vibrate, relax. One last time. Inhale, tense the whole body, vibrate, bring all the tension of the day gone by. And as we relax, let them all go. Completely relaxed body and mind, bringing ourselves into this session. Let's pray together. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar Ji, beloved Gurudev, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints and sages of all religions, dear friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow at thy feet. Dear Master, guide our thoughts, guide our understanding, that we may absorb these teachings into our whole being, into our consciousness, and live our lives always in tune with thy guidance. We are thine, be thou eternally ours. Om Shanti Shanti.
Good.
Okay. One chant and a short meditation, and then we will. Shri Gurudeva, 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 Deva, Shri Gurudeva, Shri Gurudeva, Shri Gurudeva, Shri Gurudeva, Shri Gurudeva, Shri Gurudeva, Pausing for a moment, calling out to God and gurus, sitting up straight, gaze uplifted at the point between the eyebrows, chest up, chin tucked in. As we gaze up at the spiritual eye, the seat of superconsciousness, Master said this is the transmitting station. Call out to God and gurus here and feel their response, he said, at the heart center, the point of intuitive receptivity is in the heart center. Keep calling out and try to tune into their response. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, as we have been reading these chapters, we've seen the that Swamiji was seeking right from the start. He says that he felt it was a beautiful family that he had. There was nothing wrong with anything that his life was wherever he was placed. It was a beautiful family, loving. Everybody was nice. There was no problem, no as such. But then he always felt that something is missing, right? Something not just adding up, that this is not his world. And he has been seeking, he tried conforming to what the others in him, in the world behave like. And every time he kept coming back to, like, this is not me, this is not where I belong, this doesn't seem right. And so this has been his quest from different schools. He's been been in different places over the globe, even studied in England and in America in different schools, but somehow he was just not able to mold himself to what the world was. And so the quest is continuing, and there were a lot of times when he himself was in his quest, he was coming to various perceptions. He was getting it, that what is right, what is life, what is God. But then there was nobody to tell him that, okay, what you are saying is actually what it is, because nobody knew in his world. Nobody knew the answers. So it was it was his own trying to come to some conclusions and not very sure whether this was right or not. So here we are still looking out, finding like it's a very the life of a typical disciple who is seeking, right? We go through various things, and then we keep saying, okay, this is not it, this is not it, neti neti. So slowly he's also coming to that. So let's first listen to Swamiji reading the chapter, and then we will discuss it.
Chapter 12. Who am I? What is God? All the world's a stage, says Jacques in Shakespeare's As You Like It. Few people realize how little their personalities represent them, as they really are. Emerson, in his essay on the Oversoul, wrote, "We know better than we do. We do not yet possess ourselves, and we know at the same time that we are much more. I feel the same truth how often in my trivial conversation with my neighbors, that somewhat higher in each of us overlooks this byplay, and Jove nods to Jove from behind each of us. Men descend to meet. Every man is in his soul divine. He merely persuades himself by concentrating on his outer life that he is a baker, banker, teacher, or preacher, that he is rude or sensitive, athletic or lazy, genial or solemn. He sees not that all these are only roles, reflections of the likes and dislikes, the desires and aversions he has accumulated over incarnations. What has once been acquired can surely be shed again. The outer self changes endlessly. Only in his inner self is the soul changeless and eternal. Much of my life seems almost in retrospect to have been planned for me. Certainly my experiences up to this time had given me basically the lessons I had a need to learn. It was perhaps due to this same suspicious someone's plan for me that I spent the better part of the next year working at the Dock Street Theatre. The various roles I acted on the stage taught me to stand back mentally from myself, to observe this peculiar specimen, Don Walters, acting out his normal daily role as a young American male of somewhat cheerful disposition, an aspiring playwright, and a more or less perennial innocent abroad. My associations at the Dock Street Theatre helped me in time to see the shallowness of all role-playing, whether in or out of the theatre. For most of the people I met there were always on stage. They even based their self-esteem on how well they could pretend. A year spent with them added immeasurably to my yearning for values and attitudes that were true. I arrived in Charleston toward the end of June. The Dock Street Theatre, I learned, was closed for the summer months and scheduled to reopen only in September. I took a room in a small boarding house where I received lodging and 3 generous meals a day for only $10 a week. The atmosphere there was pleasantly familial. Most of my fellow boarders were students at the Citadel, a nearby college for men. The friendship of congenial companions my own age threatened for a time my intentions of devoting myself to writing. Rationalizing the threat, I told myself that, as a budding writer, I needed to absorb all that I could of local color. Aside from a few scattered poems, footnote, one of which is included at the end of this book. So, aside from a few scattered poems, my accomplishments, so-called now, were limited to a succession of parties, outings to the beach, and merry bull sessions where everything was discussed from politics to girls to recent gossip. Gradually, I expanded my frontiers to a study of the way people at various levels of Charleston society lived their lives. I went everywhere, met people in widely diverse walks of life, explored some of the dingiest dives, was a guest in several prominent homes. Charleston was a small city then, of some 70,000 people. It is much larger now. I found within its narrow boundaries a representative cross-section of America. With the middle and upper social strata, and to a lesser degree with the lower, I was already somewhat familiar. But the lower strata I now encountered were an eye-opener. I'm not referring to the poor, whose simple dignity often gives the lie to that condescending designation lower class. Some of the people I met were actually wealthy, but their meanness of heart, their narrow outlook, and their indifference to others' well-being condemned them to lives of criminal greed. Included among them were the owners and operators of sordid speakeasies, which posed as fronts for still more illicit gambling rooms upstairs, and, one suspected, for other hush-hush activities as well. These people projected an almost visible aura of dishonesty, cold brutality, and evil. Some of them were, as I say, wealthy, but their riches had been acquired at the pig's trough of human desperation. Equally sordid were the lives of most of the people who frequented these places, for the customers, too, were out purely for what they could get for themselves. Their conversation reflected a hardness. Their brittle laughter crackled like ice. Such people were the perennially homeless, in consciousness, if not in fact. They were men and women who wandered aimlessly from city to city, seeking transient jobs and still more transient pleasures. Individuals whose character was fast losing distinction in the blur of alcoholic fumes. Couples whose family lives were disintegrating under jackhammer blows of incessant bickering. Lonely people who hoped blindly to find in this wilderness of human indifference just a glimpse of friendship. Everywhere I saw desolation. This was, I reflected, the stuff of countless modern plays and novels. Why that literary preoccupation with meanness and desolation? Is great literature something merely to be endured? Who can possibly gain anything worthwhile by exposure to gray hopelessness? Yet these too were undeniably a part of life. Their effect on me spiritually, moreover, proved to some extent wholesome, for the awareness they gave me of man's potential for self-degradation lent urgency to my own aspiration for a higher potential in myself and in others. Consequently, I took another stab at attending church. I even joined a church choir. But I soon discovered that this meant only exchanging one kind of sterility for another. The church atmosphere was more wholesome, no doubt, but partly for that reason, it was also more smug, more resistant to any suggestion that some higher perfection might be attainable. Civilized man prides himself on how far advanced his present state is from that of the primitive savage. We look condescendingly on his tribal way of endowing trees, wind, rain, and heavenly bodies with human personalities. Now that science has explained everything in prosaic terms, modern man considers himself wiser for having lost his sense of awe. But I'm not so sure that he deserves congratulation. It strikes me, rather, that dazzled by his own technology, he has only developed a new kind of superstition, one infinitely less interesting. Too pragmatic now to worship, he has forgotten how to commune. Instead of relating sensitively to nature around him, he shuts it out of his life with concrete jungles, air conditioning and music, with self-promotion and noisy entertainments. He is obsessed with problems that are real to him only because he gives them reality. He is like a violin string without the wood for a sounding board. Life, when cut off from its broader realities, becomes weak, thin, and meaningless. Modern technology alienates us from the universe and from one another. Worst of all, it alienates us from ourselves. It directs all our energies toward the mere manipulation of things until we ourselves assume qualities that are almost thing-like. In how many modern plays and novels are men idealized for their ability to act with the precision and unfeeling efficiency of a machine? We are taught to behave in this world like uncivilized guests, rudely consuming our host's plenty without offering him a single word of thanks in return. Such is our approach to nature, to God, to life itself. We make ourselves petty, then imagine that the universe is petty also. We rob our own lives of meaning, then call life itself meaningless. Self-satisfied in our unknowing, we make a dogma of ignorance. And when, in civilized smugness, we approach the question of religion, we address God himself as though he had better watch his manners if he wants a place in our hearts. After a month or so of paddling in the waters of Charleston's social life, both high and low, I finally decided I'd expose myself quite enough to cross-sections of a society whose members seemed at least as blind as I was. None of my new acquaintances had contributed anything positive to my search for meaning. And of local color, I felt that I had seen altogether too many browns and grays. My own purism, of course, held a certain narrowness of its own. Had I been less rigidly critical in my attitudes, I might have attracted more uplifting human associates, or I might have discovered in the very people I met qualities truer than I dreamed. On the other hand, to do myself justice, it was to a great extent with the very aim of overcoming such rigidity in my own nature that I had made it a practice to mix with so many different types of people. Toward the end of summer, I moved out of my boarding house to a small apartment at 60 Trad Street. Here I began to write a one-act comedy titled Religion in the Park. Bitter as well as funny, the play concerned a woman who wanted to live a religious life and eagerly sought instruction from a priest, only to have him discourage her every devotional sentiment by careful emphasis on religious propriety. Meanwhile, a passing tramp rekindled her fervor with tales of a saint who, he claimed, had cured him of his lameness. Here at last was what she'd been seeking: religion lived, religion experienced, not couched in mere social customs and theoretical dogmas. Alas, in the end, the tramp proved to be a fraud also. An alcoholic, he had merely invented his tale in the hope of coaxing a few easy dollars out of her. This woman's hope and subsequent disillusionment reflected my own spiritual longings and the skepticism that continued to prevent my actual commitment to a religious life. An interesting sidelight on that one-act play is that the saint, according to the tramp story, lived in California, the very state where I was later to meet my guru. Could I have been aware on some deep level of consciousness that this was where my own destiny lay? Once, as a child, while crossing the Atlantic, I had met a boy from California. I remember thinking at the time, that is where I must go someday. Years later, when first contemplating my trip to Mexico, I had considered briefly whether I might go to California instead. Then I'd put off the idea with the verdict, it isn't yet time. Emerson's word came back to me now, more in question than in certainty. We know better than we do. Had I known? When the Dock Street Theatre opened in September, I went to seek affiliation with it. I was told, however, that the only way I could do so officially was to enroll in its drama school as a student. Counting myself well out of the academic scene, I asked if I might not be given some other status. Finally, the director permitted me, partly on the strength of my new play, to affiliate with them as an unofficial student. Under this arrangement, I was able to study stagecraft in the evenings and at the same time devote my days to writing. During the following months, I acted in a variety of plays, mingled freely with teachers and students, and served in a number of useful, if more or less nondescript capacities. These activities gave me some understanding of the business of stagecraft, particularly that of putting on plays in a small community theater. As an actor, however, I'm afraid I was by no means a star. This isn't me, I kept thinking. How will I ever learn who I really am if I keep on playing people I'm not? The experience was worthwhile, however, from a standpoint of my intended profession as a playwright. The daylight hours I spent by myself, at first writing and then increasingly thinking over my old problems. What is the purpose of life? Who am I really? Hasn't man a higher destiny than, I looked about me desperately, than this? Most important of all, what is true happiness? Can it be found? If so, how? During the time I spent writing, I threw myself into the task of developing the techniques of my craft. Curiously, perhaps for a budding playwright, I wrote no plays at this time. I wanted to keep my mind flexible to pursue new directions in stagecraft, and more importantly in myself as they presented themselves. Instead, I wrote poetry and tried still to develop a sense for poetic speech in drama. I also pondered the theater's potential for inspiring a far-reaching spiritual renaissance. To this end, I studied the plays of the Spanish playwright Federico Garcia Lorca, to see whether his surrealistic style might be adapted to induce in people a more mystical awareness. My probing thoughts led me one by one, however, to a dead end. How much, after all, can the theater really accomplish for people, spiritually speaking? Did even Shakespeare, great as he was, effect any deep-seated changes in the lives of individuals? None, surely, at any rate, compared to the changes religion has inspired. I shuddered at this comparison, for I loved Shakespeare and found little to attract me in the churches. But the conclusion, whether I liked it or not, was inescapable. Religion, for all its fashionable mediocrity, its sham, its devotion to the things of this world, remains the most powerfully beneficial influence in the history of mankind. Not art, not music, not literature, not science, politics, conquest, or technology. The one truly uplifting power in history always has been religion. How was this possible? Puzzled, I decided to probe beneath the surface and discover what deep-seated element religion contained that was vital and true. Avoiding what I considered to be the trap of institutionalized religion, of churchianity, I took to walking or sitting for hours together by the ocean, pondering its immensity. I watched little fingers of water as they rushed in among the rocks and pebbles on the shore. Did the vastness of God find personal expression similarly in our own lives? The juxtaposition of these thoughts with my daily contacts in and out of the theater filled me with distaste. How petty seemed man's desires compared to the impersonal vastness of the ocean and of infinity. The loftiest aspirations of the people around me seemed mean, their values to an incredible degree selfish and ignoble. Egos pitted themselves against other egos in petty rivalry. My fellow students at the theater insisted that such behavior laid bare the realities of human nature. So, in fact, had declared the modern dramas they admired. Alas, far from bemoaning these realities, my friends gloried in them. Aspiring actors that they were, they prided themselves on pretending selfishness, rugged egoism, indifference to the needs of others, and rudeness, until the pretense itself became their reality. My associates of those days helped me spiritually more than I realized at the time. For the more they mocked me with their insistent claim, "This is life," the more my heart cried out silently, "It isn't. It just can't be." And as my cry increased in urgency, it deepened my own search. More and more I understood that what they termed life was only living death. This isn't to say that sordidness has no objective reality of its own. God was trying to get me to see, rather, the depths to which man without him can sink. One evening outside my apartment, I encountered a fellow student walking in a daze, almost staggering, hardly able to hew a straight line. My first thought was that he must be drunk. Then I noticed dried blood on his forehead. Evidently something more serious was amiss. I led him indoors. Between long pauses of mental confusion, he related to me the following story. I was sitting quietly on a park bench, enjoying the evening air. I remember hearing footsteps approach behind me. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the grass, returning slowly to consciousness. My coat and trousers were gone, so was my wallet. Minutes passed. Confused as I was, I had no idea what to do. Then I saw a police car on the other side of the little park. In relief, I staggered over and explained my predicament. My natural assumption was that these policemen would help me. Well, can you guess what they did? They arrested me for not being decently clothed. At the police station, I was put into a jail cell without so much as a chance to protest against this outrage to justice. For some time, I tried to get them at least to let me make a phone call. Finally, they made that much of a concession. Just one call, the sergeant said. I phoned a couple of friends of ours who came over with fresh clothing. Now, would you believe it? Our friends are in jail and I'm out. Shaking his head unbelievingly, he concluded, I still don't understand how it all happened. What had occurred, I learned later, was that these friends, infuriated at this example of police indifference, had cried, You don't even seem to care that a crime has been committed. You're under arrest, bellowed the police sergeant. When our friends resisted this further outrage, they were set upon by every policeman in the room, beaten up and thrown into jail. My injured friend, meanwhile, was released, presumably because he was now decently dressed, and told to go home and forget the whole thing. It was hardly 15 minutes later that I met him, wandering about in confusion. I immediately returned with him to the police station. As we entered, wild screams issued from a back room. Moments later, a couple of policemen emerged, dragging a screaming black woman across the floor by her heels. They dumped her unceremoniously before the sergeant's desk, where she passed out. One of the men, to whom this silence must have seemed disrespectful, brought out a rubber hose and beat her with it on the soles of her bare feet. Some moments later, she regained consciousness and began screaming again. Satisfied, they dragged her into the jail and flung her, still screaming, into a cell. The remainder of the time I was there, I heard her moaning quietly. Throughout this grim episode, the rest of the policemen, about 15 of them, stood around laughing. I haven't had this much fun in years, gloated one of them, as he rubbed his hands gleefully together. Obviously, to reason with such brutes was impossible. I therefore tried to get information out of them. The sergeant finally gave the name of a judge, whose word he required, he said, before I can release these hoodlums. It was already late, but before the night ended, I succeeded in getting the judge out of bed and our friends out of jail.
Jayanti, you are muted. Thank you. So, the rest, as I said, we will read if we have time today. Otherwise, we will read in the next session. So, where now we are seeing he is, in kind of a lot of confusion. Some things he's understanding, some things he's completely, clueless about. He's in a world which uh, people seem that this is normal, this is okay, and everybody is behaving in a particular way. And so now we see the first page where he says he is quoting Emerson, where he says, "We know better than we do." That's a point, right? Again, all of us know. I mean, the answers even to most difficult problems today, if we have anything that we are facing, we already have the answers. Our the just that we have closed, the mind is so restless, and we are so we think we are this limited person that we are not able to come to those conclusions or come to those answers. Every problem has a solution, and the solution is within us if we are able to calm ourselves enough to reach there, right? So he says, we know better than we do. We do not yet possess ourselves, and we know at some time that we are much more. So he again says that, every man is in his soul divine. Isn't that what Master said? That God made man, we are all made in the image of God. God made us like him, yet we don't believe it, right? So we are seeking somewhere, we are seeking the answers, the pleasures, the happiness, the love in this world, which is at best, uh, it's full of Maya. It's a duality, and Master said it is never going to give us what we are really seeking, because it doesn't have those answers itself, right? So he says every man in his soul is divine. He merely persuades himself by concentrating on his outer life that he is a baker, banker, teacher, preacher. He is rude, sensitive, athletic. So, as Swamiji always used to say, that we are all a bundle of self definitions, because as we grew up, our family or our friends and colleagues later, they tell us that we are a particular way, or we ourselves start thinking that I think I am like this, or I'm artistic. So we create these illusions or delusions about ourselves, that we are only that, whereas we are souls, right? Which we don't yet know, we don't yet have not realized. So we feel that this is me, but then we have lived so many other lives where we have been something else, somebody else, a man, a woman, um, so many, maybe not even on this planet. So but then we have forgotten those lifetimes, but the masters remember it all, they know it all, they know not only about themselves but about us also, right? So hence they are able to guide us. But till right now, Swamiji has not yet met his guide. So he's analyzing, he's thinking a lot, but he is coming to the right conclusions without knowing that he is right. So he says he sees that all these are only roles, reflections of the likes and dislikes, desires and aversions he has accumulated over incarnations. What has once been acquired can be surely shed again. The outer self changes endlessly. And that is what we are all here, right? The spiritual journey is all about knowing who we really are, coming back to our center, coming back to who we really are, rather than, it's like the master said, it's like diamond inside, but we have accumulated all that mud. All we have to do is wash them off. That is all this spiritual journey is all about, to wash off that mud so that the diamond can come out again. So only in his inner self is the soul changeless and eternal. So, and he's talking about, there's always, he always feels that, there is something, that is somebody who's guiding his life so far, right? So he says it was perhaps due to the same suspicious someone who, so he always felt that, it was not allowing that suspicious someone wouldn't allow him to get too attached to something if he started to like, he would be taken out of that. So there was always somebody who was watching over him. So I spent the better part of the next year. So then he has been thinking that he can become a playwright. So he is trying that out. And interestingly, he says, the various roles I acted on the stage taught me to stand back mentally from myself to observe this peculiar specimen, Don Walters, acting out his normal daily life as a young American male of somewhat cheerful disposition and aspiring playwright. Um, Again, this is a very important thing for all of us. It can be a takeaway for us as we go about our life to just step back. That is what Master has given us. I mean, even when we come on this path, the first thing that we are taught is Hong Saw, right? Hong Saw. What is Hong Saw? It's like you become an observer and watch the air entering this body and exiting. And Master said that more than you breathing, feel as if the you become one with the air and allow that you were just watching that air coming in and going out, become one with that air. What are we doing in the process? That we are just kind of stepping away from whoever we are and just watching this process of this body breathing. And in that, that is a very effective technique to bring the mind to not be restless, thoughts to go away and become very calm, right? So this can be our, as I said, a takeaway that anytime we feel we are very caught up with something, with a regular life that is always throwing something at us, just for a moment, just pause and feel as if I'm watching this person do these things, playing that role of whatever, even just being with a family member. So always there is this person within us who is watching what is happening. Why am I reacting in a particular way? Why am I doing what I'm doing in a particular way? That can be a very good way to for introspection also, and also to be very aware rather than just uh, reacting to situations as and when it presents itself. The moment we step back and watch, then we are able to respond in a more aware, with a lot of awareness, right? So here he goes, he says, a year spent with them added immeasurably to my yearning for values and attitudes that were true. So he says that, people, when I mean, these people are all stage people, they're, playing different roles. And so, they're pretending, right? And when you're on stage, we are pretending. Again, aren't we all in this world? If you see, we always feel there is a mask over everybody's face, right? A personality. It's like they are pretending to be something, just so that they are liked, just so that they can be seen as somebody who they might or they might not be. Most people in this world are behaving like that. We all seem to be on a stage and are always under scrutiny, always being watched. And so he says that this was very interesting. Once we had done a silent retreat here at our center. Some of you might have attended that. So when it was for a few hours only, and when we finished, and the whole point was, when you are during in that silent retreat, you will not acknowledge people, no eye contact. So even if somebody is sitting next to you, you don't have to talk to them or even look at them for that matter. So even when eating the lunch, everybody was completely absorbed in themselves, no contact with anyone. And once we finished, we had a closing circle, and there was this girl who said that the very thought that when I enter a room and I don't have to acknowledge anyone was very liberating for me. It was I felt a lot of stress go away in that. That is a very important point, that it is stressful that we have to acknowledge, and we have to, if they say something, we have to say back, or if they aren't saying anything, then I need to make that contact, I need to communicate. So there is always this pressure on us. So when that was taken away, that girl said, I relaxed in that moment. It was so liberating for me. So this is what it is like, what he's talking about. When you're on stage, and they even base their self-esteem on how well they could pretend. This is how everyone is doing in this world. So he's talking about a small group of people, but it can be expanded to include practically the whole world today, the way it is, right? Okay, so here he's saying, again, he's saying where he's staying, that place where he was staying. He says the atmosphere there was pleasantly familial. Most of my fellow boarders were students. And so, again, he got into that thing of, belonging, where it felt very familial. As Master said, that familial warmth, which, it's like the Maya. Maya tries to, entice you into that, where you feel that familial warmth and you don't want to leave it. And I mean, he had written about this in Autobiography of a Yogi, when he and his friend had run away from home to go to Himalayas, and then the brothers had come in pursuit. And the friend then, was just so happy to meet the families that were. So he says, rationalizing the threat, I told myself that as a budding writer, I needed to absorb. So he's rationalizing himself. He was getting involved, getting absorbed into that atmosphere, but he was trying to rationalize that, as a budding writer, I need to observe how people behave, how everyone, so I have to interact. Isn't that how all of us also do that, for being, still very caught up in this world? We try to rationalize, this is necessary, right? It is necessary to do this, I have to do this. The mind gives us all kinds of reasons to make us believe that this is the only way, this is the right way, because otherwise we will be engaging ourselves into finding God, into meditating more, into reading what my master has said, into listening. That will take us away from this world of delusion. So the mind will always keep us, engaged. The ego will always try to keep us engaged and rationalize in saying, no, no, this is the right thing to do. So something similar was happening here. And where he's saying that when he's interacting, he's seeing that when he's saying, talking about the lower strata of people, which he says, I'm not talking about poor people who still have their own dignity, even if they're not financially well off. He's saying it's the people who are, even though they are wealthy, it's their meanness of the heart, their narrow outlook, their indifference to others' well-being, condemn them to lives of criminal greed. And we see this all around us in the world today, right? What he's talking about in the small part of a city, but it is there all around us. Okay. So he says, it says, some of them, as I say, wealthy, but their riches have been acquired at the big straw of human desperation. So they're like dishonesty, cold brutality, evil, everything is like, that's what he is noticing there. Okay. This the conversation so people who are coming there, so the kind of environment, that is why master said that the environment is stronger than the willpower, right? So it's very important to choose the right environment. When you are in this environment, now he says that even the people who come there in these places are all the similar ones. They have brittle laugh, they're like, there's like a lot of hardness. And he says such people were the perennially homeless, in consciousness, if not in fact. So they're wandering souls, like wandering aimlessly from city to city. Now just look at this. This is all around us, as I said. And try to, contrast. I mean, we will see it later when Swamiji comes, I mean, where he's seeing hopeless situation, right? With the kind of people, the indifference to others' problems, they're just, lonely people, they're all. And then he comes to be at his master's ashram. The kind of contrast that he experiences. These are, and all of us also who are, here in this, our spiritual quest, and have a guru now, and we are here, we can see the difference, right, from the world in general versus when we are together. I mean, Swamiji says that, somebody had come and said to another village and said, I'm so nice and refreshing to see people so joyful here. Swamiji said that, if one person or two is, like that, joyful all the time and happy, then it can be probably then. But if everybody in that place is similar, everybody is joyful, then it has to be because of something that they are doing as a community that is doing, that is right, that is the reason. So this is what it is. If what he is describing here is so hopeless, it's because what everybody is doing in that place, right? The kind of people they are associating with, the kind of consciousness they are living with. So this is where right now he is experiencing, and he knows that this is not what I want, this is not my place. And here he says, yet these two were undeniably a part of life. Their effect on me spiritually, moreover, proved to some extent wholesome, for the awareness they gave me of man's potential for self degradation lent urgency to my own aspiration for a higher potential in myself and in others. And Master said that, um, it is on this planet only that we can also progress spiritually very fast, because of, when we see the world around us and we say, oh boy, God, I don't want to be here. I mean, what kind of world is this? And we are seeing around us the wars, the killings that is happening around, and we feel, no, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. So, this can help us in our, in the to give momentum to our spiritual quest, saying that no, I don't want to come back on this planet. So Master said it is on this planet only, maybe, or planets like Earth, where we can progress spiritually also, if we put our, our mind and our this thing to it. Because in astral plane, where, where we are, if even for highly evolved souls also, everybody is like you, everything is nice, everything, everybody is, harmonized in your mental plane, or wherever you, and energetically wherever you are. So there is no nothing to aspire for, there's nothing to us, for us to want something different. So people can go on for years, thousands of years, just being in that. So it is here on this earth that gives us the opportunity to progress spiritually. So a lot of high souls also try to be born on this planet so that they can further their journey. So it is how we take it that is important. So then, and he says, then, he was even trying out to, now this, he says, no, this is not me. So he was going to the church, but again, that also didn't, he was still not feeling any connect with that, also because of, as he says, for the very reason it was also more smug, more resistant to any suggestion that some higher perfection might be unattainable. So they were again very happy in what they were doing and feeling more smug about themselves, that, we are doing the right thing. Look at the people out there. Um, the religion and even in spirituality, that can creep in, that we are, somehow more special than others because I'm meditating, because, I know all these scriptures and I can. So it is something that all of us need to be very careful about. So he says that civilized man prides himself on how far advanced his present state is from that of the primitive savage. And, we look down on people who are, as he says, the tribal way of enjoying trees and wind and rain and heavenly bodies. This is all so called, we depend on technology. But again, he says that, in the process, what are we doing is losing touch with our own center, right? He has developed his own a new kind of superstition, one infinitely less interesting, too pragmatic now to worship. He has forgotten how to commune with nature, how to commune with God. In fact, we remember there was a tsunami some years ago in India. I mean, that part of India and the that side of Indian Ocean. And in Andaman Islands, there is this tribals who are still living, and they live very cut off from the world. They don't entertain others coming into their space, and they're left alone. They're still living a very primitive life. And then in Andaman Islands, there are also other people who are living and all. So when the tsunami was, they're being declared, and people were advised to go to higher areas and live. So most people who were in touch with the technology went, and but there was a lot of devastation. Even then, these people tried to go or uh, follow the technology and all. And then once everything cleared, they realized that those tribals, what happened to the tribals? We were not able to communicate with them, and what would have happened to them and all. And then they realized nothing happened to them. They had moved up much earlier than there was devastation for the rest of the people who were depending on technology and were not really communing with the nature. These guys were, they are in touch with the nature, right? None of them. They already sensed that something was happening, and they had moved already to a safer zone. So this is what is happening. And there was devastation for other people who had no clue what was happening till it came and hit them. So that is something so sad, because we are all depending on something else, technology, to guide us how to live our lives. So instead of relating sensitively to nature around him, he shuts it out of his life with concrete jungles, air conditioning, and mosaic, with self promotion and noisy environments. We are busy with this outside noise, and some people are like, say they get desperate if there is silence. They have to constantly play something loud, and in the process, what is happening is the person is losing touch with his own inner self, with that beautiful music that is there in his inner world, the sound of Om that is within each one of us. We are struggling. People struggle to hear that, because we are so caught up with this outside noise. So he's obsessed with problems that are real to him only because he gives them reality. Such an important point Swamiji is making. Things seem so important. In fact, some problems that probably at 10 years back would have seemed so important, when we might be struggling with that. Now it is not so important. What happened? Okay, we just talk about it probably, but we have moved on. But at that moment, why is it the problem seem real? Is saying is because he gives them reality. This is something that we all need to probably meditate on. And as I said, if we are able to step back from ourselves and watch ourselves, then it would be probably easier to understand that, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I'm giving reality to something that probably in another 2 years might not be so important to me. So he is like a violin string without the wood for a sounding board. Life, when cut off from its broader realities, becomes weak, thin, and meaningless. Such an important point he has made here for all of us. That if we lose, the touch with our own center, uh, it's going to be, a rough ride. On the ocean, the waves of the ocean being crashing and getting back, kind of thing. He says modern technology alienates us from the universe and from one another. Worst of all, it alienates us from ourselves. We are seeing that, with all that modern gadgets that we have in our hand, we are losing touch. Even when people are sitting together, everybody is busy with their own mobile phones. So nobody's talking, nobody's communicating. So these are things that he wrote at a time, I think the mobiles wouldn't be around, but he was so right. And we don't know what else is coming. Today mobile, tomorrow something even more tempting for each one of us to be lost in. So he says we are taught to behave in this world like uncivilized guests. That's what, taking from this, the nature, from God, from life itself, till it hits back. When the nature gives back, we are unable to take it, and then we go around crying, why all this is happening? Why the earthquake? How have we been treating this nature? We all need to see around us to understand this is what is happening. Self-satisfied in our own knowing, we make a dogma of ignorance. And when in civilized smugness we approach the question of religion, we address God Himself as though He had better watch His manners if He wants a place in our hearts. Oh my goodness, these are huge points that He is making. And here He says that, when He's talking about religion, He's saying that um, when he's writing this that play where he says bitter as well as funny, that play that he was writing for a woman who wanted to live a religious life, and how she was taken for a ride. On one end there was this priest who was telling how to live, and then the tramp who was trying to fool her. But the whole point he's making here is, at last, religion lived, religion experienced, not couched in mere social customs and theoretical dogmas. That is what Swamiji is also trying to come out of, right? He was not happy with the religion, the way it was practiced, and he was trying to understand how to approach God. And so Swami Vivekananda had very beautifully said that it is no doubt a blessing to be born in a religion, but it would be a misfortune to die in one. So, we have to go beyond that. That is what spirituality is all about, right? That religion can only take us this far. As he's saying that religion is very powerful, where he's talking about in the page number 115, where he says that religion, for all its fashionable mediocrity, its sham, its devotion to the things of this world, remains the most powerfully beneficial influence in the history of mankind. So it is a good start, but then just being caught up in that is not going to help us. We have to go beyond it. So he's saying, avoiding what I consider to be the trap of institutionalized religion, of churchianity. So he started sitting on the banks of the ocean and thinking. Again, he's analyzing, he's trying to understand, he's trying to introspect, he's trying to understand, and he's able to come to the conclusion that the way people are living their lives is so petty that life cannot be only this. No, that it has to be more expansive, like the ocean. So he's saying that he's looking out for something that is, who am I? The questions are coming to him. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of this life? That is what he is questioning. So he says that so he said, this is life. But everybody is happy with it. They are fine with it. They think this is the way it is. So everybody will say, this is life. This is how it is, right? This is how the worldly people tell us. And he says, no, it can't be. It just can't be. It isn't. And as my cry increased in urgency, deepened my own search. Each one of us who have come on the spiritual path, at some point we felt that, life doesn't seem the way it is. This is not something I can relate to, right? That is the reason we are all seeking. That is the reason we are all here. We came looking for something. So similarly, he is on that journey. So this isn't to say that sordidness has no objective reality of its own. God was trying to get me to see rather the depths to which man without him can sink. So again, he's talking about, people, when he's talking about that episode of his friend, it shows how insensitive people have become. The so-called protectors of people, the police themselves, and they're laughing at something, or giving trouble, making people suffer. This is the environment. People are so caught up in it. Is everybody bad? No, but they are so caught up with what the environment is around them that they are behaving like beasts, insensitive. And he says, this is not my world. So he's again seeking. So we have come to this we are in page 117. We will continue reading a few more pages there, and then we will finish this chapter in the next session. Anybody has anything else to add, or we can end the session today. No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Janti.